Let's bring Andrew DiCecco in. Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. Check out Andrew's piece that we will get into right now. He is looking at 4 unheralded Eagles poised for prominent roles in 2020. These are guys that maybe you weren't thinking a lot of. And Andrew, on a Friday, what's going on, pal?
Not too much, man. Just it's pouring over here right now. I'm looking to get back to some normal weather, like we had, some 80s and sun.
Yeah, that storm last night had me up. I mean, it was booming last night, lightning crazy. It was nuts. But all right, well, let's look at this story that you wrote for the website, because these are guys that are kind of under the radar that most people may not be pointing out. And one of the guys on this list we talked at length about during this week is Boston Scott. So you find that he could be a guy who has a prominent role in 2020. Why Boston Scott on this list?
Yeah, Boston Scott, because, if you remember last season, he was kind of buried. He was an afterthought. He was buried behind Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, Wendell Smallwood, Corey Clement, and even Josh Adams, if you remember. So a lot of people didn't really give him much of a chance, Boston. And, predictably, he got released at the end of the summer. But he did catch on to the practice squad, and, he got his opportunity when Clement suffered that shoulder injury in early October, and he got a chance to get elevated to the active roster. And he really made the most out of his opportunities. He was a key piece down the stretch there, and I think he finished with the third most offensive yards of all the players, which is saying a lot considering, he didn't come on. He spent his first 6 weeks on the practice squad. I really like his skill set and what he can bring. He's thick, right? So he's 5'6", over 200 pounds. He can bang it between the tackles. He's very slippery in space. He can, make some plays in the passing game. And he showed that, when he's given opportunities, he's going to maximize his touches.
Everyone talks about what if Miles Sanders gets hurt, but do you think that the Eagles would be in trouble if Boston Scott doesn't stay healthy, or is it a small enough role where maybe another type of player can sneak in there and fill his shoes?
No, that's a different type of caliber there. If Boston Scott were to go down, it's not nearly the same magnitude as if Miles Sanders were to go down. I think that you could find a guy like, let's say, a Corey Clement or even like I said, a Mike Warren or a free agent that's not even currently on the roster, if that's the case, if that's how it plays out this summer. But I think that his role can be adequately filled by a number of players given his skill set. I just tend to think that he brings so much energy, and you kind of saw that his energy was kind of radiating throughout the entire offense whenever he would make a play, because he finished his runs. He was tough to bring down, and he was just fired up, man.
Now, Boston Scott's an interesting guy, because if he has a role in the offense and he ended up getting hurt, do the Eagles have a guy that can do some of the things that Boston Scott does?
I think Corey Clement can. I mean, obviously he's far from a lock right now. He's going to be in a 3-man battle for one of those depth spots, and it could even be a 4-man battle if they sign a veteran free agent later in the summer. He doesn't quite have the wiggle or the burst that a Boston Scott has, but he does have. He can catch the ball. Obviously, as we've seen, he had 100 yards receiving in the Super Bowl. Made 2 of the greatest catches that I've seen in recent memory, and that one against Monday Night Football from Carson Wentz, and then of course the one in the Super Bowl. So he's well adept at catching the football. So I think he can do that. He's proven that he can return kicks as well. Like I said, he doesn't have that type of electric burst that a Boston Scott has, but he can fill some of those roles.
It's funny because it sounds like, Scott doesn't have this huge role, but he has a unique role, and that they are planning on trying to make the most. But we talked about it when you were on Tuesday. It's like, how do they fit him in with all the other guys? But he seemingly has a skill set that not a lot of guys on this team have. So he's one of the guys that I'm really intrigued as to, did he sell the Eagles coaching staff enough last year? Did they have to find ways to get him the ball?
I think they have to. When you look and see what he did down the stretch, these are every game was like, a do or die situation, and he was called upon to shoulder a pretty significant, burden for the offense, because there wasn't a whole lot of playmakers outside of Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, and Greg Ward. So he really rose to the occasion. and prove that, I guess in that Giants game, he made his run after the catch was phenomenal. And you saw some of the ability that he has and when he's given these opportunities, what he can do with the football. And it's going to be really tough to get, to work him into the offense, honestly, Mike, given all the weapons that they have this year. But I think there's a place for Boston Scott. You have to find a way to manufacture touches for him, even if it's just a few carries a game. Because, like I said, he brings a unique skill set to the offense. And I think that when you look at the Eagles' offense as a whole, it's very exciting to when you assess it and see the different skill sets that a lot of these guys have and what they can bring to the table.
Do you think he will be okay without much grass time? Is he a player who obviously spent time last year, like enough time with them where the grass time won't be too much of an issue?
I do, Hunter, and the reason why I think that is because he had the entire season for one, and he was also he came on. I guess it was late in 2018 when they signed him from the Saints practice squad. I believe he played in the Houston Texans game and a couple, sparingly, but in a couple other games. So he's been in the system for a while. He's been around. He kind of gets a sense for what they're looking to do on offense, and he has a good grasp on the offensive scheme. So I think that it won't really affect him as much as it will some of those rookie free agents, and even Corey Clement, who really hasn't been a focal point in the offense since 2017.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Check out his article now at 97.3 ESPN.com. Let's go to Matt Pryor because he's an offensive lineman, so not a sexy guy, but he might be an important guy, and you wonder, do you peg him as the Vitae, as, hey, if the left tackle Andre Dillard goes down and they don't bring Jason Peters back, is Matt Pryor that guy that plays that position? If Brandon Brooks goes down again, does Matt Pryor play that position? If Lane Johnson goes down, does Matt Pryor, is he the first guy that gets tapped on the shoulder to really fill these very important spots on the line?
I think now he certainly is, and that's largely by default, right? So they don't, outside of Matt Pryor, let's take a look. They got Jack Driscoll, they got Prince Tega-Winogu. You have Jordan Mailata, who hasn't finished. He's finished last 2 seasons on injured reserve. He's an intriguing project, but he's not ready to step right in there and play. I would think, and then you also have Nate Herbig. So you don't have a ton of experience. I mean, Matt Pryor is their elder statesman, so to speak, of their reserves, and he's only played 79 career NFL snaps. He started the playoff game in place of Brandon Brooks. He's 6'7", 330 pounds. He started 31 games at TCU at tackle and guard, so he does have the versatility. He just hasn't had the NFL snaps. He hasn't logged a ton of time on the field. So right now they're going to go into training camp with him being that guy, but it's far from assured that he's equipped to handle that role. I think they're going to enter camp with him being that guy, and then should he falter, they'll probably have to reach out to some veteran offensive lineman, and they probably, to be honest with you, would be better served signing a veteran just for competition purposes. And when you really look at what Vitae brought to the Eagles, he played in 55 games, 20 starts. He definitely had his faults. I mean, he had his low points, just like anyone, but he'll be remembered for that 13-game stretch that he had in 2017 where he played admirably in place of Jason Peters. He also played right guard and tackle. So it's one of the biggest holes, in my opinion. It could be the biggest hole on the offensive side of the ball.
In those limited snaps that Pryor had, what impressed you the most last year when he actually was on the field?
I thought he moved well. I thought he moved well in space, and I thought that he's surprisingly strong. A lot of guys, like especially that are 6'7", they don't necessarily play with a great understanding of pad level and leverage, and he did that, and he definitely had the strength to anchor and get out. Have the Eagles their offensive lineman to be athletic and be able to move well in space, and he proved that he could do that. Granted, we haven't had a large sample size, but what I saw from Matt Pryor was encouraging.
All right, Matt Pryor, too. Remember, he played, as you mentioned, he started that playoff game, and many people thought that he played pretty well in place of Brandon Brooks. It maybe, that might be his best spot, but like Vitae, Vitae was probably best at left tackle, but he did handle himself when he knew he was playing. That was the difference. When Vitae had a full week of prep, he was way better than when he had to go into in the middle of a game, right?
Right. When he had a full week to prepare, get your mind right, your mindset ready to be a starter. You know who you're going up against. You have a full week to watch film on that player. I felt like he was more, like you said, he was more prepared, and he seemed, he was on top of his game rather than kind of get thrown in, in the middle of the game or And he might not have he didn't seem to be as fluid or as smooth as he has when he had adequate time to prepare. But, like we said, he had his ups and downs, but when he had a chance to play for a significant period of time, which was out of necessity, but he proved that he could handle it.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football 4, powered by Inside the Birds. I want to go to the third guy on your list. Now, this is an interesting conversation, I think, is Josh Sweat, because I really believe that the third spot behind Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett, and Barnett has had a ton of injury issues, and Brandon Graham is getting older, that those two guys, I think, I'm not saying that Graham's an injury risk because he hasn't been an injury-prone guy, but he's had some injuries, and he's getting older. Barnett has been an injury risk. I think the third guy is pretty important, is Josh Sweat, ready and capable of not only being the third guy, but possibly being elevated to the second guy.
Well, I definitely think he's equipped to be the third guy right now. When you look at the offense, or when you look at the defense, rather, one of the more intriguing players on the defense is Josh Sweat, because you see how important that third defensive end role has been in recent years with Chris Long and, of course, Vinny Curry last season. Vinny Curry gave them he played about 39% of the snaps, rushed phenomenally on the inside, and he also gave them some good pressure off the edge as well. He had his best season since 2014 with 5 sacks. Now, with that being said, Josh Sweat proved that he could stay healthy for all 16 games. Remember, that was a big knock on him coming out of Florida State. He had his lengthy injury history. He played all 16 games. He played only 41 less snaps than Vinny Curry did last year, and he finished with 1 less sack. So I think that when folks like to say that there's not a veteran presence there, and that's kind of troubling, I think when you really look closer at the numbers, you really see that, Josh Sweat handled himself quite well in his opportunities. And, let's see what the young players have. I think at some point you really need to turn it over to young guys that you invested draft picks in. He was a 4th-round pick in 2018, and you really need to see what they can do. When he came in 2018, he was very light. He needed to get stronger, and I believe he was like 240 pounds or something. He played 68 snaps as a rookie, 9 games. He had that ankle injury. But then you saw what he did when he came back in the offseason. He was a lot bigger, faster, stronger. He handled himself well in the preseason, and he was in that battle with Deshaun Hall. We all know how I feel about Deshaun Hall. I think he's a great player that unfortunately suffered that ACL injury. But Josh Sweat proved that he could step up when needed and more importantly, answer that injury concern.
Do you think the defensive tackle rotation is so strong that it can make life easier for someone like Josh Sweat when he is in the game?
Yeah, I do, Hunter. And the reason why is because you have first of all, you have 3 guys, and Hassan Ridgeway proved that he can be an effective interior rusher. But Malik Jackson here is the key player. I know that when he was on with you guys in April, he kind of intimated that he wasn't keen on playing on the outside. If he had to, he would rather be have a 3-man rotation on the interior. But he has played on a defensive end and played well at defensive end. So having a guy that can do that, and you want to get your best rushers on the field, I think having that versatility from a guy like Malik Jackson, provided that he can stay healthy, I think that's huge and does lessen some of the burden that's going to be on that third defensive end.
What about competition there? I mean, is Sweat the clear favorite? I know you like Hall, but is there a lot of depth at this spot, or is this Sweat's position really?
Well, Mike, there's not a ton of depth there, to be honest. There's Josh Sweat, and you have Deshaun Hall coming off the ACL, so he's not going to be ready. But then you have Sharif Miller, and you have Joe Osman, who the team really likes, but unfortunately, in the open practice, he suffered an ACL injury of his own. And then that's essentially it. Sans them adding a veteran here late in the process, but there's not a ton of guys there. But they have names, but now you really need to a lot of these guys need to prove that they're worth keeping around. I know Joe Osman, he's not the prototypical size for a defensive end, but they liked him in the joker role where they can kind of move him around, and they like the energy that he brings, and he would have been a force on special teams. But I think that, they like Sharif Miller. They invested a 4th-round pick in him a season ago. He wasn't entirely ready to play, but he's going to have to play this year, like I said, unless they add somebody like, let's say, an Everson Griffin or something down the road.
All right. Andrew DiCecco, Football 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Number 4 on his list. You can check out the full article at 973ESPN.com at DiCecco NFL. I like this conversation on Duke Riley because I guess he's a guy that we've brought up on the show a few times, but I don't think people know who he is. They don't know the background of him too much. He was a third-round pick by the Falcons. He's a linebacker, and this is a team that has linebacker questions. Nate Geary, T.J. Edwards, and then I guess the battle for depth behind those two guys. But Duke Riley, can he surpass one of those guys? Can he be a guy that ends up surprising? You think he can be?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Duke Riley. Right now, there's a ton of opportunity at the linebacker position. And last season, when you look at the special teams production snaps, you see Nate Geary, then it was T.J. Edwards, then it was Rasul Douglas, and then it was Duke Riley. Obviously, you're not going to see Nate Geary and T.J. Edwards play as much. I believe they played 75% of the special team snaps. That's not going to happen in 2020. And Duke Riley, I think you kind of saw him. He was, of course, he was acquired in that late September trade from the Atlanta Falcons. He kind of he really picked up with Dave Phipp's special teams unit. Was a core member for them. He only played 28 snaps on defense, so he wasn't really effective there as he was still trying to get his bearings. But I think you saw the impact that he can make in such a short period of time, because when Camus Grugier-Hill went on IR in December, they appointed Duke Riley to be a team captain. And he was a third-round pick, and he does have that LSU pedigree. He kind of fell out of favor with the Falcons. He suffered a meniscus injury as a rookie and another injury the season before, had some tackling issues. He is undersized. He's about 6'1", 218 pounds, but he can really run. He's a 4'6" guy, excellent range. Now it's just about – and he's had a year in the system, which is more important. So I think he will be going into the offseason. He went into the offseason having been in the system, and he'll be able to carry that over into training camp. And he has the athleticism to kind of fill that Camus Grugier-Hill role.
Do you think if he plays more linebacker that his special teams impact will go down?
Yeah, I do. And you kind of saw that with Camus in Camus' case. But let's not forget, you have guys like Alex Singleton who didn't even play. When you look at it in terms of them, I believe he only played 190 snaps, let's say, on special teams. So I think he'll be a key player on special teams. And I also think that Davion Taylor, he's not nearly ready to play on defense, but he does have that athleticism. You want to get this guy on the field and let him run down the field and hit somebody, because he does have that tenacity and that can add a spark to Dave Phipp's unit. So I think Davion Taylor, you have him. Sean Bradley projects more as a spot player, as a rotational player, as a special teams player, as Adam has said before on the show, I believe. And then you also have Dante Olson, let's not forget, who Jeff and I have spoke about. He's a tackling machine, almost 400 tackles for his career at Montana. He's going to be like, if he's going to make the roster, that's how it's going to be. He's going to have to make it through special teams. So they have some names there. I don't necessarily see Duke Riley being a huge force on special teams. I think that'll be something that he does in a limited capacity, but I do see him being that third linebacker, because as of right now, going into training camp, he's their best cover linebacker.
Well, it's interesting. So you got Geary and Edwards, probably locks to make the team. Third-round pick, Taylor, probably going to make the team. That's three. How many linebackers do you keep? That's one question. And then you have Jatavius Brown, who you brought as a free agent. Does he make the team? That would be four, which essentially means you would have Sean Bradley, the Olsen kid, and Duke Riley. That gives you seven. I mean, it looks like you got we know the Eagles don't value linebackers, so how many of them do they keep? But they seem – it's almost like the wide receiver spot. They got a lot of guys who do different things here.
Well, when you look at special teams, linebacker is a key role in that on that unit in that third phase. So I think you can justify keeping six guys with Alex Singleton possibly being in the mix for that sixth spot. I think Jatavius Brown will make the team, and I also obviously Davion Taylor being a third-round pick is a lock. There's going to be a hotly contested battle for that sixth spot potentially with Sean Bradley and Dante Olson and Alex Singleton for that. But I mean, you don't just want to keep six linebackers for the sake of keeping six linebackers. You want to maximize the potential on your roster, obviously. So, I mean, they have five guys that I kind of view as locks, with that sixth spot being, primarily a special teams player, considering, if you're looking at it like how I'm looking at it, with Duke Riley being a focal point on defense, I don't necessarily think that he'll have that big role on special teams. So you can kind of justify keeping sixth there.
Now, Jatavius Brown's a guy who has started in the past. Are you ruling him out as a factor here?
No, I'm not. And the thing is he started 56 games, 23 starts. he's entering, I believe it's his fourth season from Akron. He's an undersized guy. He's kind of flashed a little bit in his early in his career with the Chargers, but again, he's a guy that has suffered with a rash of injuries and inconsistent play, at least last season. And he was kind of reduced to a special teams role in his 12 games. I believe he played 51% of the snaps. I think he'll certainly have an opportunity here, but I like a guy's chance. Like a guy like Duke Riley's chance is a little bit better to make the team, given that he's been in the system a year versus a free agent addition like Jatavis Brown or some of the rookies.
All right. For more on that article, check out 973ESPN.com and follow Andrew on Twitter. DiCecco NFL, our Football at 4 powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew DiCecco from 97.3 ESPN. He, of course, will have the Eagles coverage all season long. And hopefully, let me ask you, Andrew, do you have a feeling that there will be fans in the stands September kickoff week 1?
Well, I heard you and Hunter talking before I came on about the golf outing. And yes, to answer your question, there's going to be, thousands. There's thousands that go to these golf events. So that's definitely trending in the right direction. I have to think that if you're the NFL and the way that things are kind of moving, you're getting a lot of encouraging news. I think that you'll start to see that it's going to become a realistic possibility in September.
All right. We look forward to that. By the way, the golf tournament we're talking about, the Memorial in Ohio, that is happening in July 16th through the 19th. It will be the first sporting event that will have fans in attendance since March in that golf event in Ohio. And we'll keep an eye on that, obviously, to see how that goes. He's Andrew DiCecco. What's the IPA this weekend?
Oh, gosh, I hadn't even given that any thought yet. I need to get on that.
Oh, my Lord. It's a happy hour Friday. Come on.
And no thought.
What about what's in your guys' fridge this weekend?
I'm glad you answered me this. My girlfriend's parents are in town. They live in upstate New York, so they brought some IPAs from a brewery up there, this Resurrection Brewery Company. So when I get home today, I have a smorgasbord of new selections in there.
I don't want to get my answer. I have leftover White Claws.
Oh, jeez.
Yep, mango.
We'll give you a pass there.
Yeah, but I know when I get home, I got a whole new. Her parents brought these from upstate New York. They're coming down. I've never had these before, so I'm ready to go. It's a happy hour Friday. Andrew DiCecco here on the Sports Bash, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. All right, man. We'll talk to you Tuesday.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend.
Andrew DiCecco, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.